What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a new edition of the By the Horns podcast presented by Toyota. And you know that Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. So find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. Cam Smith rocking with my man K.C. Johnson. You know him, CHSN Bulls Insider, as we continue on with this offseason and as summer continues to progress. KC, we're a few days away from Summer League basketball with the Chicago Bulls roster. And it's going to kick off this Friday in Las Vegas as the Bulls face off against the Toronto Raptors. KC might be torn on this matchup because he was a big fan of 𝗁𝗏𝗄𝗋, who was drafted by the Toronto Raptors at 9. So, KC, before we get into that matchup for the Bulls on Friday against the Raptors in Vegas, how you doing, man? How's the summer been treating you? I know you've been over at the Advocate Center watching this Summer League roster gel together to put on a product for the fans in Vegas.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. This is the week, Cam, where kind of normal rhythms of the regular season, we're over at the Advocate. They open up practice for access to us. We got a chance to talk to Noa Essengue and Matas Buzelis and Billy Donovan III, who's coaching, met Lachlan Olbrich for the first time. So, yeah, it's like it's Summer League Bulls, so it's not the real deal. Even the players will admit as much. But it's cool to kind of be at the Advocate and get some access, and then obviously be out in Vegas later this week for the first couple of games.
Nice. And it's great also just to see basketball happening again, coming off of the finals. And I understand that it's Summer League, but if you've been paying attention to the other NBA leagues that are going on this summer, you have the California Classic out there on the West Coast. Of course, the Utah Summer League is going down as well. So you get to see some of these top picks play. I took in Ace Bailey against VJ Eshcom this past weekend, KC. So Eshcom showed me some signs, and Ace Bailey showed me a little bit of signs, though, even though he was very shot happy, trigger happy, I should say, with that. But getting back on to this Bulls team and what we see with this roster, and we were joking around a little bit before we started the pod about this roster being the epitome of basketball being a global game. I mean, so many names out there, interesting names, especially when it comes to being entitled to the 4th of July, like Javon Freeman Liberty, who is from the city of Chicago, guys like that. Caleb Grill's on the roster as well. But a lot of international guys that have that international flavor that will bring something to this roster. So for you, KC, and what you've seen through practice and what you've heard and what you're expecting from this Bulls Summer League roster when they get out to Vegas, where is that for you?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that's jumping out to me, Cam, is something we talked about a lot leading up to the draft was just how the Bulls were so focused on style of play, right? And they're obviously going to try to mimic the way the NBA team is playing. It'll be a little more ragged, obviously, but, that's where Noa Essengue's, skill set just kind of jumps out at you because, all we've heard is his ability to run in transition, maybe start the break, maybe do some secondary ball handling. And even a guy like Lachlan Olbrich, who will be on a two-way, and mostly with Windy City Bulls, they've talked about his quick decision-making and his passing abilities. So, Again, you got to fall in love with the player as a whole, but the fact that they really prioritize people that fit with what they're trying to do stylistically was a theme for both of us, obviously you and me, leading up to the draft. And now it's playing out in Summer League practice as well.
Nice. And it's great to hear that because it's about just the culture and the system that this Bulls team wants to continue to maintain. And it's kind of, when I think about that, it's almost like feeder program, right? When you think of Pop Warner football or Biddy basketball, when you have some of these areas in the city on and outside of the city of Chicago that have these guys being funneled into these high schools that are going to play a certain style and a certain system. And it also helps that the head coach is the son of the actual head coach of the Chicago Bulls, with Billy Donovan III, who's the head coach of the Windy City Bulls. And KC, we were playing a sound yesterday on the Chicago lead, me and Gabe Ramirez, and it was Billy Donovan III, and he's speaking. But if you have your head down and you don't look up at the screen, you would swear that it is Billy Donovan Sr. speaking. And that's the wild thing about that.
Well, it's even crazier, Cam. It's like last year we were making fun, like he chews gum the same way as his dad. It's like, his dad's like a vicious chomper of gum. And like, you watching these games, he's just like pounding the gum. So it is uncanny, the similarities and some of the characteristics. And, I remember last year we did a story on Billy Donovan III getting this opportunity, and he's got to deal with the nepotism charges for sure. Right, he's got an incredibly famous last name, right? But like, this is a guy that coached some in the Spurs system. I mean, he's obviously putting in the dues, beating the Bushes in the G League now as the head coach, and I think just being around him this week again, and I don't know him as well as I know his dad, obviously, but like, I just feel like there's a different comfort level to this because, he's gone through a whole G League season now. He did the summer league last year, and that's something I'll explore further with him when we get out to Vegas and just kind of talk to him about his comfort level. But, Billy Donovan, his father, is there in the wings watching practice. Obviously, he's invested in this as well, and they'll be out in Vegas. But it's got to be a thrill. I remember talking to the dad last year, seeing his son live out his dream. I mean, and this is something that obviously he wants to do because the G League is not very glamorous, by the way.
Coaching it is a grind.
Coaching the G League is a grind. That's commercial travel. That's bus travel. That's the whole works. So I give Billy Donovan III, props for that. And, it'll be cool to see him try to implement some of what the staff and the organization is trying to do out in Vegas.
Yeah, Casey, I really believe that the G in G League stands for grind. It's the grind league, man. From the coaching staff to the players to the trainers, everything is guys really putting in the time and effort to reach their potential and also reach their ultimate goal, which is to get to the NBA level. And the great thing about Billy Donovan III and also his father and Billy D is that he wasn't on this side of, hey, I'm the head coach. Let me give my son an assistant spot on the staff and just do it that way. No, he's going to have his son go through the rigors and grind it out. And that's just who Billy Donovan is. I mean, if you even go back, and we know this from just speaking to him and covering him back to his days of when we know his basketball and playing career at Providence. He was a grinder. He was a guy that worked. And so it's that family aspect and that just work level that I knew he was going to instill in his son. And, when you have a guy that understands how things work at the G League level and has been through an assistant role and just kind of understanding what works for certain teams and certain players. I'm really curious to see how he leads this team out in Vegas. And so that will be one thing that I'll keep my eye on. But a couple of other things and players that I'm keeping my eye on as we go to this Bulls Summer League roster has to be, for me, KC, number one, and Matas Buzelis. And we understand how he finished the second half of the season in that starter role, more minutes. We saw more production from Matas, was able to elevate himself and got into that conversation of, hey, he could be first team all rookie. Now, Matas eventually finished second team all rookie, but you saw the growth with a guy compared to the first half of the season. And I always go back to that first matchup against the Boston Celtics where defensively he just looked lost. And I think Matas would agree with that if he listened to this podcast, because he's a guy that doesn't sugarcoat anything and understands that he used that game as a teaching tool, as a lesson for himself to get better. But you contrast that and compare it to the next few times that they faced off against the Boston Celtics in the second half of the season. Totally different player, carried himself differently. So that's the Matas that I'm curious and really interested in seeing out in Vegas, KC, with how he plays, how he leads. But then also, I don't want to see a lot of Matas in Vegas, if I'm being honest, KC. I just want to see maybe a couple of games, because if he plays a couple of games, that means he's putting in work and he's dominating. What about you?
Yeah, I was going to say, don't blink, because, I would guess the organizational approach will be one, maybe two games. It's funny because how Matas is wired, Cam. And like yesterday we were talking to him, he said he wants to play every game out there because he loves the ball. But, it's just wild to me. I mean, the kid's still only 20, and like we're only a year removed from him going through this same kind of head of spinning process that Noa Essengue is going through. And it is really remarkable, the similarities. I mean, Matas came here as a 19-year-old. Noah's here as an 18-year-old. And just obviously this is the front court of the future for the Bulls. But to see Matas move into this kind of leadership role and trying to take him under his wing, it's cool to see. But, that's the off-the-court stuff. The on-the-court stuff is like what really jumps out to me is both guys are talking about how defensive-minded they need to be. And when you have young players that are focused at that end, I mean, clearly we've been talking about the Bulls needing more two-way players. And when you've got two foundational pieces that are focused on that end, that's pretty impressive stuff. Now, obviously, they've got to go out and do it. They've got to learn the league. Noah's got to get a lot stronger. Matas has got to get stronger, et cetera. But when you have that base, I think that's a really, really strong place from which to work. And I'm excited to see, what they can do out in Vegas together.
Yeah, and that's where the excitement lies for me, KC, is going to the foundation of these guys being workers. Like, they really love the game, and we know that of Matas and what we've heard from Matas and even from Noah in the times that we spoke with them, and we'll get into that conversation as well of what we gained from just listening to Noah and understanding his mentality, but more so with how these guys really want to work, how they really want to get better and improve themselves to the point where they are some of the stars of the NBA. And don't get it twisted, everybody watching on the CHSN YouTube page, or you're listening wherever you get your pod. These guys want to take this franchise and get it back to the upper echelon of the NBA and want to be stars in this league. And Matas is one of those dudes that when he puts his mind to it, you know that he's going to get it. And for someone that came in last year, drafted 11th overall by the Bulls, very early on in some of these mocks, some people were predicting him being the number 1 overall pick. But you heard the energy that you got from him, how excited he was to be with his hometown team, the Chicago Bulls. And it feels like it's the same energy going into this summer league for Matas as he prepares for season 2 in the NBA. And for me, that's what I love about what he brings in that mentality, is that he still carries that youthfulness. I mean, he's 20 years old, but still that joy. He's not just bored by, okay, I have to go through this again. No, he wants to continue to get better. And it's that excitement, that energy that really is consistent and impressive. And we know that Matas is ready to show up and show out. And it's going to go down on Friday against the Toronto Raptors. But getting back to Noah, and again, you've spoken to him, you've heard him, and just getting a sense of his mentality. I have as well. So start us off on what you've gained from listening to Noah and just a few interactions that you've had with him after the practices this past week.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to steal your thunder because I'm going to reveal part of your answer and then you can go in depth on it. But you talked to me off camera about his confidence level. What jumps out to me is something similar, but a little bit different, is his maturity level. I mean, again, this kid is only 18. He turns 19 in December. He's the second youngest player in the draft. And I joke about this, but he's in between my two sons' age. And I just can't get over that. Like, I got a 17 and 19-year-old son. I'm talking to this kid and he seems to me like, I mean, my kids are mature, I think, but he's like really mature, and it's this is a guy that has never been in America really much before, and just learned the language 2 years ago, and yet just his poise with which he's dealing with us and the way he's asking questions on the court, from what we're both seeing and also hearing from Billy Donovan III, and just kind of his approach, it really, really jumps out, his maturity level. And again, look, in July and everyone's flush with, the off-season glow and optimism, a lot of work has to happen, and there will be growing pains. There will be bumps along the way. But again, when you've got somebody who's focused on the work, carries himself with maturity and poise and humility enough to ask questions, I'm just really impressed by that. And that would probably be my biggest takeaway from having been around him just these first couple of days. And I'll see how that progresses as he moves through competition in Vegas.
All right, KC passing me the ball on that one, because we're tied up when it comes to just what we were impressed with Noah by. And that was the impression I got from him with him being on the Chicago League yesterday with Gabe Ramirez and I. And we were at the White Sox Stadium, and Noah actually threw out the first pitch. And so you have a guy, first time in Chicago, really first kind of real experience in America for himself, or having an extended stay since he's with the Chicago Bulls. And it's a lot, right? You have live television. It's a Major League Baseball stadium. It's a new world for him, and he's going to be front and center throwing out the first pitch on a mound for a game that he's never played before. And I spoke with Noah, and he said that he's never thrown a baseball. But when he sat down on set with us before the interview, and you talk about the focus that he has and the maturity, normally when we have certain athletes on, more so younger athletes, and we have a series where we have a lot of Shy Sox athletes on, players that are at the collegiate level, but somewhere in that 23 to about 19-year-old range, there's a little nervous energy that they sit down with. But with Noah, when he sat down, KC, when he finally sat down, it felt like he continued to sit down because he's all of 6'9". Even I'll give him another inch there in terms of height is 6'10". But when he finally sat down, he folded his arms in front of his chest and he just laid back and he was chilling. As Gabe and I started to have conversations with him, and it was so smooth, it was so effortless, just relaxed, poised. And I'm like, wait a minute. I had to check his age again. I'm like, I know he's 18, but he carries himself with the maturity of a 25 to 35-year-old. And that's part of how the off the court and his personality can help him on the court. And you said that he's focused on the work. And that's just part of it when you can mix those two in. And don't get it twisted, everybody. We know that he's 18. He is nowhere near where we believe he can be. He's nowhere near where he believes that he can be. But it's his mentality and speaking with him on the Chicago League that I'm sitting back and I'm listening to his answers of how the biggest scout on Noa was that, yes, rangy guy, wingspan is ridiculous. Yes, second youngest player in the draft. He's a defensive guy, but speaking to him, he says that one of the underrated parts of his game is that he can pass the basketball. And when he started to speak on that, KC, instead of sitting back with his hands folded, he started to lean up a little bit more in his seat and really engaged into that answer, because it feels like he wants to prove not only to the Bulls organization, but also Bulls fans that he's not just a defensive guy. And we've heard Matas say this in some ways in your conversations with him and his conversation with the media after practices, that offensively, how he moves with the basketball and how he just moves on the court is really impressive. And now, of course, his shot is going to take some time to really develop, but the work is there, the form is there, and he has other aspects of his game, according to Noa, that really people will be surprised by. And so listening to that, and then also listening to why he wears and why he chose the number 24 because of the late, great Kobe Bryant, he carries that Mamba mentality. And so people may say that, and it feels like that Mamba mentality phrase and word and title is overused. But when a guy says it and you look into his eyes and he says that he lives it and he breathes it, and this is more so me speaking for Noa here, you get a sense that, yeah, he wants this. He wants the smoke. He wants to work, but he wants to be great. And that was impressive just in our conversation that we had yesterday on the Chicago Lead.
Yeah, and you mentioned, his ball handling ability and his passing. I mean, one thing that jumped out to me is, and we've heard this from both Billy Donovan III and also Noa, is like he's already acknowledging like this level, even though it's only summer league, is just a little bit faster than even the professional level that he was playing at in Germany, and like how the decision-making process, like you have to make quick decisions like almost immediately on every catch or dribble. You got to learn when to attack closeouts, things like that. And like the fact that he's already recognizing that, I asked him, like, how does that skill set improve? He said, you just got to go through it trial by fire, and that's how I'm going to get better. And so to me, that's a real, again, mature kind of perspective and awareness. And again, it's not, we're going to go out to Vegas and, he might have 4 turnovers or just 5 shots. I mean, that's just part of it. But the fact that he's cognizant of it, I think is pretty sweet. So there's both on the court things to like about him and off the court things to like about him. And that also speaks to the Bulls' plan for him. You heard General Manager Mark Eversley on draft night, Cam, talk about how there's going to be a development plan for on the court stuff and off the court stuff. I can't overstate enough how much this is for an 18-and-a-half-year-old kid to be coming over to America. He does have his mom with him now. I'm gonna wait till we get out to Vegas to ask him if that's going to be the plan for the whole season. But she's with him now. I mean, this is a lot that's on his plate, but he does seem pretty unruffled by it all. At least to us outwardly. Maybe he has some moments privately where he's, a little overwhelmed, but he's not to us. In fact, he's so poised that he reached out for some dap, and I believe somebody left him hanging on the Chicago.
Ooh, you know what, KC? Let me break this down, because I have to throw some shade to our digital team and social team at CHSN, who do great work, phenomenal stuff that they always continue to pump out. And let me just say, for the record, I'm not going to name this person, but it wasn't our guy, super producer Edgar Perez. It wasn't was not him, but it was somebody else that decided to make a meme of myself towards the end of our conversation with Noa and Gabe Ramirez and I on the Chicago Lead. As I get ready to turn to my main camera, KC, you know how it is on television.
TV professional,
right, exactly. I'm the host of the show. I got to make sure that I move things forward, especially when I have my producer in my ear saying, all right, we got to go to break. So as I'm turning my head to my main camera, KC, and I'm throwing it to break, I can see the wingspan of Noa Essengue come over and across the body of Gabe Ramirez out of my peripheral, because this is where the old point guard instincts come into play, trying to see the floor. And as I'm wrapping the segment, I'm like, oh my gosh, Noah's reaching out for the dab and I'm leaving him hanging. But before we went to commercial break, I made sure I, played it into it, said, hey, I can't leave my man Noa hanging. We dapped up. So that wasn't put on the meme, but it was just a little funny moment that we had there. But before I dapped him up, he did the very new generational thing when somebody sticks their arm out and they're waiting for the dap, and that person that they're reaching out to doesn't dap them. They just end up dapping themselves. And that's what Noa did, which made it hilarious. So he has a fun, hilarious personality to himself, as much as he is laid back and mature and wise beyond his years. So, yeah, I have to take that one and just kind of redeem myself in some way. I will say that I put a post up of some of the photos that our social team put out and tagged Noah in it, and he followed me on IG. So I'm taking that as like an olive branch that we're all good and we're all solid, KC. So yes, right. I did leave Noah hanging just a little bit, but it wasn't intentional.
Well, it's the second time we've become a meme this season, because I don't remember late last season. I did a sit down with Kobe, and Kobe went to shake my hand, and I gave him the fist bump, and I refused to budge. And our social media team threw me under the bus and made me look like even more of an idiot than I already am. So now I got some company, Cam, but you didn't look as bad as me. Okay, so.
It's all right, man. I feel that we should take it personally with our social team of them trying to catch us off our square and trying to get these daps. So we have a whole little series going on. So it ends there, people. We're not having any more dap mishaps between 𝗻•C Johnson and myself with this Bulls team. So we'll be just fine. But I love that you brought up the point with Noah mentioning it's going to be trial by fire, trial by error for him out in Vegas, because as much as we discuss his maturity level, what he's trying to show in terms of the abilities that he has on the court that haven't been discussed as much by certain media members, he's going to be a guy that is sometimes he's going to look out of place. He's going to look overwhelmed on the court because he's transitioning to an entirely new style of play. You're going to have guys that are fighting literally for their financial lives and their families with the NBA Summer League out in Vegas, and a lot of two-way guys, first-year, second-year guys, and even some veterans trying to latch on to an NBA roster. And this is an 18-year-old kid that has to mature with his body and get there. But if you allow him some grace and allow him to go through those eras, I think as you eventually see him develop and when he puts the work in, he will get better. And we saw that with Matas last year, 𝗻•C, when he went through his issues of handling the basketball and kind of getting pushed off of the block when he tried to post up or trying to run in for a rebound on an offensive tip, just getting moved out of the way physically. But those are the things that Matas took in lesson-wise and got better with as you saw the season go on, especially in the second half. So just give Noah some grace. And I also would say this, 𝗻•C, I would say give Matas some grace as well. And Matas is not a 10-year veteran. He's going to be heading into year number 2. So some things that he's working on with this game that I'm sure he's going to try and showcase on a summer league level that we'll need to have some fine tuning, and Matas understands that as well.
For sure. And I'm old enough to remember being at Derrick Rose's summer league debut in Orlando when he's had 7 turnovers and the sky was falling, right? I mean, it's like, to me, it's less of, as you know, it's less about statistics in summer league. What I'm watching is, can the guy run the break, fill the lane properly? Does he attack a closeout the right way? Does he take the open shot rather than, pump faking and drawing a defender and then, creating a tougher shot for somebody else? Does he have weak side defensive awareness? Does he box out? I mean, that you're watching it. Does a guy know how to play basketball? It's not about statistics. Those are fun to break down, but it's less about numbers and more about nuance. And also, it's not going to be perfect, but yes, we're starved for basketball right now. This is the shiny new toy, so we're going to be analyzing it and breaking it down and all that stuff. But Derrick Rose seemed to recover from his 7-turnover summer league debut pretty well, didn't he? I mean, it's but it'll be fun to be out there, and I'm excited to see what he does. And quite frankly, I'm excited to see what this 𝗦cie𝗰𝗶𝗹 can do, because we had a chance to meet him for the first time today. And he's another guy who seems very, all Australians are very affable, right? But he seems very, very poised, very mature. Yeah. Something that I was not expecting was, and I'm not calling him 𝗬𝗀 yet, but maybe some 𝗬𝗀 light. You've heard Billy Donovan III talk about the ability to run some offense through him and having him serve as a hub. And he even grabbed the rebound and brought the ball up sometimes. I was not expecting to hear that this week. So again, we have this all in perspective, but these are shiny new toys, and it's fun. It's fun to kind of see what they can do out in Vegas when the lights are bright.
Yeah, from some of the highlights that I've seen from 𝗦cie is that he's a guy that likes to get up and down with the size that he has, and he brings a little physicality to that position as well. So that's, for me, I'm really curious to see how he plays out there in Vegas, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets into a little fisticuffs in terms of like pushing and shoving, just because he brings that physicality level. And look, playing in the Australian League, the NBL, like you have to play some type of level of physicality and bring that to the game. So there are pieces there on this roster that we, of course, are having our eyes on. We talked about Noah. We talked about Lachlan, these two draftees, the newest Bulls for this Bulls team. Javon Freeman-Liberty, a Chicago guy. We've seen him before with the Summer League roster and the Bulls, and just how he's been able to get buckets. And Javon's always been that, just knowing the pedigree and family tree that he comes from. For those out there that remember this name, especially if you're from Chicago and remember this era, Marcus Liberty, that played at King High School and went on to play at Illinois and was part of the Flying Illini. So he comes from that stock, and that's his uncle, Javon's uncle. So he's a guy that you know what you're going to get from Javon. And also Javon was part of the Windy City Bulls as well and was their leading scorer and just can do it in so many different ways. But that's one of the players that I'm always excited to see play, just because you know that whenever Javon's on the court, he's going to make something happen. You don't know how and where, but it's going to happen with Javon.
Yeah, he's a certified bucket getter, and we like those here in Chicago, always have. And look, you know, he comes from a long lineage of great Chicago high school basketball players, including my fellow co-host here. No, it's like, no, it's cool. He's still, you know, there's always like somebody in Summer League too. There's these great stories of guys like trying to hang on, and you know, let's face it, Javon Freeman-Liberty's on the upper end of Summer League participants. So, you know, he had a great year in the G League for the Windy City Bulls, as you mentioned. He also was a two-way player with the Raptors for a while. So we'll see how long he continues to pursue his dream, but this is another opportunity for him to put some tape in front of some scouts and with all the eyes of the league on him. But the Summer League's always got great stories to it. He'll be one of them. But to me, the main focus is going to be obviously other three guys we've talked. Well, really 2.5. I mean, because Lachlan's going to be on a two-way contract. So the main two guys to me are obviously Matas and Noah. And then, you know, I'll also be checking out 𝗬𝗏 a little bit to see what he can do. But, a lot of cool stuff that'll be coming our way later this week.
Yeah, and it all starts on Friday. My man 𝗪C Johnson will be out in Vegas as the Bulls kick off their Vegas Summer League against the Toronto Raptors. 𝗏𝗏 facing off against Noa Essengue. So I'll be keen on when they can match up and if they are going to stay with that same matchup throughout the ball game, but it's going to be a great one. But 𝗪C will be out there in Vegas, and we'll have more information, more updates with everything with this Bulls team as the offseason continues on and things continue to be fluid with the league. So don't be surprised if we have to drop an emergency pod because somebody does something in the league that just kind of maybe shifts things just a little bit, but we will have you covered when it comes to all things Chicago Bulls. So we appreciate everybody for tapping in on the CHSN YouTube page and wherever you are listening in to us, where you get your pods. For my man 𝗪C Johnson, I'm Cam Smith. This will do it for another edition of the By the Horns podcast presented by Toyota. And Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. So find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. 𝗪C Johnson, Cam Smith, we'll see everybody soon. Take care.